นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening. When we talk about Buddhist meditation, we usually talk about training the mind, but sometimes we use different words. So in Pali, we might use the word citta for mind. Sometimes we use mano. Sometimes people use vijnana. In English, we use the word mind or consciousness. Sometimes we say heart. Some people say heart-mind. There's many different words we use. Many of the forest Ajahns just use the qualities of the mind, they say the knowing, that which knows, or the one who knows. Because sometimes the words can mean different things to different people or get confusing. Some people think the heart must mean the physical heart, and so on. So they say, well, that quality of knowing. And some people say awareness, and on it goes. It's that part of the human being that knows things. But how we know, and what we know, that will depend. And from moment to moment, the mind seems to change. That's really what we call cetasika, and the contents of the mind. So there's 52 cetasikas, the way in the Abhidhamma, different combinations of cetasika make up what the mind knows from moment to moment. It can be a wholesome state of mind, kusala. It can be an unwholesome state of mind, akusala. It can be neutral, giriya. This is probably why, because it can be the mind and then the contents of the mind can be divided up and analysed in so many ways and so many descriptions, that teachers like Luang Por Chah might just say, that which knows. And simply speaking, we say the mind that knows sometimes knows wrongly or with delusion. And that's where suffering comes from. When we know in the right way, we don't suffer. But how do we get to the point where we know in the right way? Well, that's why we call it training the mind, practicing with this mind. Training away from delusion and towards knowing the truth, or in the true way, the way things are. We often use that term. When we train the mind well, with mindfulness, wisdom, we can know the way things are, in an undiluted way. When we meditate, often we feel like we're playing a game of catch-up because the mind is so fast. It's another aspect of it. It changes so fast. These mental states come and go, thoughts come and go, feelings, emotions come and go. And the mind is also moving between the senses. So we're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, thinking. That's why when we meditate, because we're trying to train the mind, we usually try to limit sense contact, because it can be so confusing and the mind jumps around so quickly from sense to sense. So you close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes when you practice meditation, but generally it helps. And you try and find a fairly quiet place. You can never find a totally quiet place, but you can try your best to get a quiet place. You don't usually meditate, say, in a kitchen where there's food and smells around, because that's distracting. But still, there'll be smells coming and going, because that's the way the world is. We sit still, so that minimizes the touch of the body. There'll still be touch going on, if your legs touching the ground, your skin touching clothes, the air on your body, warm air, cold air. But you don't move around much, if you can, so that you're limiting the touch. And most important of all, when we meditate, we try to pick an object that suits us and put our attention on that, so that this quality of knowing is focusing on just one thing. Knowing the breath, for instance. Knowing whether the breath's going in or out. Knowing the sensation of the breathing coming into the body at the tip of the nostrils. Knowing the rhythm of the breath, knowing whether the breath is coarse or refined. Even the breath, just knowing the breath, there's a few different qualities you become aware of. But you give your mind something to do in the meditation, just to know one thing. And when you're successful, you know the breath, then you know where your mind is. And that already is quite an amazing thing, because normally we don't know our mind really, because it's moving around so much. We tend to know the results of all this moving and thinking. We know the results of our thoughts because it leads on to speech, actions, and you can sort of remember what you said, what you've done maybe. But it's very fast and you're always playing catch up. But when you put your attention on one single object and you keep doing it, you train in that, then you experience this unification of mind, the mind coming to one place. Literally, maybe one point in your body, one object, all that mental energy that's normally dispersed around your different senses comes into one place. And that is quite pleasant, because all the movement of the mind, jumping around and all these different mental states and cetasika can be quite disturbing, quite tiring, uses up different mental energy, and of course quite often brings a feeling of suffering. So if you keep practicing knowing one thing, such as the breath, or such as the meditation word you might use, such as Buddho or Dhammo or Sangho, gradually you experience more and more of this quality of just knowing one thing. We usually use the word mindfulness. We say we're mindful, we're practicing mindfulness. And there'll be moments when you're mindful, moments when you're not. But you keep practicing. You have to be patient, putting effort into that. Ajahn Chah said, training the mind in this way, it's a bit like tipping water out of a kettle. If you just tip a little bit, well, you get a few drops and dribbles. And it's an interrupted flow. When you begin practicing your mindfulness, it's not yet continuous. Your mind doesn't feel unified. You're noticing how scattered it is, how distracted it is. Sometimes that's reflected in your body, so you're moving around, itching, adjusting yourself the whole time. Maybe you can't even sit still, have to get up and walk away. Some people want to speak. I once lived with a monk who would want to keep having conversations during the meditation periods. You have to tell him, maybe this is not the best time to have a chat. If you keep training the mind, these moments of mindfulness increase and it becomes more continuous. That's like holding the kettle and tipping it more and more so that gradually the water comes out in a stream, a continuous stream. And that's the aim. When you have continuous mindfulness, you know where your mind is. It's just in one place with one thing, knowing one thing. And that's where you get a lot of energy. It tends to be pleasant, enjoyable. Your mind and body relax. And that helps you to do it longer, to do it more. It becomes easier, more enjoyable. So that's why people who meditate a lot can often sit still, meditate, put effort into their meditation for longer and longer periods. But the important thing is getting to know your own mind and training it so you have more of a sense of self-control. We use the word self-control, again, that can be a problem. You say self-control, I'm controlling a self. Of course, what we gradually find through the practice is no self. But for want of a better phrase, we say self-control comes as you practice. And that allows you to see and know this body and this mind, see it more clearly, know it more clearly. Often that gives rise to surprise when you realize how scattered your mind is. Because normally we have a delusion of self that's built up through our lifetime. And we have this sense, I'm here, I'm in control, I know my mind, I know what I'm doing. And we make choices and do things every day. And on one level, maybe you might say the superficial level, we are in control, making choices, doing things. But as you meditate, your mindfulness becomes more continuous, more refined. This quality of knowing becomes much more refined, and you become aware of all kinds of things that you didn't notice before. All these little thought moments popping up, emotional reactions, reactions to physical sensations, reactions to memories, reactions and different trains of thought coming up that you never noticed before. And at first also you don't feel like you can control all of that. It's just happening whether you like it or not. So sometimes people meditate and they don't like what they get to see or know because it feels like they're out of control. Even though they're just sitting there, they realize there's a lot of activity in the mind that's just happening by itself. We call this karma. Every moment you're experiencing karma, meaning the fruits of your past actions, the results of past things. So particularly memories coming up, and then we say perceptions. How you react to things, how you think about yourself and other people in the world. Well, this is happening based on previous thoughts, previous reactions. A lot of our karma is habitual. We just react to the same old thing. We like some things and we dislike. And we remember that, and it's almost just automatic. When we're more mindful, perhaps we can have more control, more choice. But you also notice a lot of reactions and things coming up, just habitual reactions, and some are good and pleasant, some are unpleasant. But as you observe body and mind more closely and more continuously, you'll see this at work, you'll see the karma. So there's that famous passage the Buddha gave in the Dhammapada, the first passage that the mind, in this case he called it mano, that quality of knowing. The mind is the leader in everything. It's the forerunner, it's the leader, it's the chief. Because all our happiness and sadness, happiness and suffering comes back to the mind, the way the mind is and what's going on. And everything we do in life starts in the mind as a thought, an intention. So he said, from the mind we make karma. Sometimes mental karma, thoughts and moods. Sometimes verbal karma, what we say. And then what we do, physical karma. And what we call negative karma, kusala karma, is different from the positive, wholesome karma we make. Different in the sense the intention, the starting point is different, and the results will be different. So a wholesome thought or a wholesome mental state, the Buddha pointed out, feels light to the mind. It's kind of light, and that's a form of pleasure, happiness. So it's accompanied by a happy, pleasant feeling. Whereas the unwholesome mental states that originate in the mind feel heavy, more like a burden, more like something that's painful, burdensome. So he compared the unwholesome mental states and the results of them to the wheel of an ox cart. So that was probably the main mode of transport in those days, ox carts. Even until recent times in Asia they use ox carts. And an ox cart wheel is always heavy, big, thick, made of thick wood, maybe even have an iron rim around it. Strong, because it's got to go a long way and maybe transport a lot of weight. So it's strong, and it makes a rut, a trench in the road. Because if the road is just mud and you keep having ox carts come over the road, then gradually it makes this imprint in the mud, and that gets deeper and deeper the more you travel along that road and the more ox carts go that way. So there's a sense of heaviness. The wheel of the ox cart follows the ox wherever the ox goes, but it's sort of heavy. Whereas he compared wholesome karma that we make, coming from wholesome intentions, not greed, anger and delusion, the opposites, kindness, mindfulness, wisdom, generosity, compassion, all the wholesome mental states, the result of them is a feeling of lightness. So he compared it to your shadow. Like today, hot sunny day, you walk around, your shadow follows you everywhere, but you never feel it. You may not even notice it or see it. It's just the imprint of your body blocking the sun, so you get a shadow behind that may or may not look like you. But you never feel it, you never notice it. So a totally different description the Buddha used. He's coming from somebody who understands the human mind very well, because he's trained his mind. So just pointing out the kinds of karma we make every day from this mind vary and have different results. And you may not yet feel you've got mindfulness or can control your mind or fully understand your mind, but you can appreciate the difference between the heavy karma, the unwholesome negative kind of karma we make, and the light positive karma we make. You can see from the results. Not always. There's another part of our delusion. Sometimes we miss things. We don't realize what we're doing until maybe much later, too late. Sometimes we realize instantly, good and bad karma, sometimes a long time into the future. But other times it's clear, the kind of karma we're making. And so the Buddha said a wise person, a thoughtful person will be careful. And if they notice they're making the heavy kind of karma that's going to follow them like an ox cart wheel, kind of bearing down on them wherever they go, they'll stop. That's why we try to stop when we're angry, or stop acting in greed, in selfish ways, in deluded ways, because it brings us suffering. And the more you can see that and know that, the more you want to stop making the bad karma, and the more you want to make the good karma, because you know it's conducive to your happiness. Of course, some kinds of karma are really kind of you're stuck with. So like, one person went to Ajahn Chah complaining about their health. He said, oh, I've been born and my body is really weak. Oh, I'm always getting sick. Things don't go well, I'm weak. My constitution is weak. My body is always prone to getting sick in different ways. I must be, is it some special karma I've made? Or maybe, am I just having bad luck? Where does it all come from? And Ajahn Chah just answers, it came because you were born. Like birth is it's the result of past karma, and we'd say human birth is a very wholesome good kind of karma. But once you're born, you have a body, you have to accept you get older every day, and you're exposed to the world, whether you're a kid or middle-aged or old-aged. You're exposed to the aging process. Sometimes get sick, sometimes injured, and then ultimately you get so old and sick that you die. Nobody wants that, but it's part and parcel of being born. So the Buddha encouraged us to contemplate that. Then you won't get so deluded, say when you get sick, you go, this comes with being born. It's another part of karma. So we're always doubting, where does it come from? Was it last life? Or did I do something? Did I hurt somebody? A lot of our karma is just you're born and things happen because you're here. You have to put up with it. If you want it to be different, like being born as a human being, you don't want to have any pain, don't want to get older, don't want to get sick. Ajahn Chah said, well, it's like wanting a chicken to be a duck. You're just wanting the impossible. A chicken can't be a duck. It's different. Ducks float on water, chickens sit on a branch of a tree or in some stack of hay somewhere or wherever. But a chicken is not a duck. A duck is not a chicken. If you want a duck to be a chicken, you're going to suffer. You're going to be annoyed, complain. That's like somebody who says, oh, I shouldn't get ill, I shouldn't get old, why do I have to die? And most people in the world just want to live forever. It doesn't happen like that. Nature doesn't work like that. If you can be mindful, use your mindfulness to look at this body and understand it, then you're just seeing the way it is. Then your mind doesn't have to suffer. It's the same with the mind also, the contents of the mind, these different moods and emotions we experience. You know, we don't like feeling disappointed or sad or angry. It's just the way it is. Sometimes you attach to something, then it changes, you lose something you like, then you feel these emotions. And the Buddha is encouraging us to develop more mindfulness and reflect on that, see the true nature. Oh, these things come through causes and conditions. They're just the way they are, that's just the way it is. But when we're deluded, we form this sense of self, so every thought, every feeling, every emotion is me, myself. That's where the suffering comes from. Once you have this idea of self and you cling to it, and you add or identify it with everything as part of this self, then you suffer. You miss things that you used to have. You try and own things that you cannot own. You long for things that you had before and have gone. It's because of the sense of self. As you practice mindfulness, you notice more and more these things are just like that. Things arise and pass away. They change. They don't last. That's the mind that sees Dhamma. When we don't see the Dhamma, then we get caught into suffering, wishing for things to be different than they are, wanting things that you haven't got, wanting to get rid of things that you have got that you don't like. On and on, feeds all these mental states, the contents of the mind. Where does the suffering come from? It comes from the delusion of self and then the attachment. So the practice of meditation, mindfulness helps to reveal this or show this to you. Maybe after practicing you become very grateful to the Buddha. If we hadn't had the Buddha, we wouldn't realize, maybe wouldn't know about this. Wouldn't even think of looking inwards at our own mind. We spend all our time just looking at other people and looking at the world around. And when we do that, we just get more and more confused and suffer more. So that's not the answer to the problem. And when we're deluded, we think, oh, the more I know from the world, the more I study, learn, find out about the world, the better I'll be. If we're not looking at our own mind, we don't know our own mind, we don't know this mind, then we'll suffer. Don't realize the karma we make, good or bad. Don't understand cause and effect. So we misinterpret everything. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight.